So let's talk about phone in ham radio. I just recently seen a Facebook post on this, and that inspired me to maybe talk about this just a little bit further. I don't know the exact history. I assume it has something to do with they were trying to back when they were everything on amateur radio was just CW or just Morse code. Once they started figuring out how to transmit signals, they probably could relate it back to a telephone, and they call it phone. So it's kind of a legacy type of description, calling it phone. Phone is just voice. And there are multiple different types of voice modes within ham radio. Well, let's go with the ones that most people are familiar with. Your HTs, typically they're FM. So frequency modulation, that is also the same thing that your radio stations use that you listen to in your car. It's one of the modes. It has it's a 100% transmit signal, meaning it's always transmitting data when you hit that PT, or it's always transmitting something when you hit that PTT button. It just might not be intelligible. Really, it's just a carrier wave, essentially, is what it's transmitting. And then you add your voice to that carrier wave. So that's how you key up your repeaters and so on. Now let's talk about AM, because people are also aware of AM. AM is the same thing that's on your car radio, those AM radio stations. Those AM radio stations happen to be very long wave radio, but to bring it back to ham radio, or to radio in general, your CB radios until very recently all use AM. So they're a much wider signal. They're about 6 kilohertz wide, if I remember right, maybe even slightly wider, somewhere in that range. But anyway, they are a wider signal, so you get a lot more fidelity out of it because you're putting on a lot more of your frequency range of your voices into it. FM is also the same; it puts in a lot of your frequency range into that as well. But just lost what I was going to say. So anyway, AM is both on your CB radios and also on many HF radios, and that was the OG of phone on HF radios back in the day. That was the original carrier, or the original voice mode. Then, as things started getting crowded, people realized if you cut off half that signal and only transmit one half, you now can, you effectively double your frequency allotments, because now you can do single sideband. That's where single sideband comes in, and that allowed you to have two people talking in the same area of where you had one before. So you have a lower. So essentially, what they did is they took an AM signal, because everything starts off with AM in this case for a lot of these HF stuff. But they took the AM signal, they cut off the carrier wave, and they cut off the other half of the signal on the other side of the carrier, because carrier's in the center, and then now you have a lower sideband, which is the lower side of the signal, and an upper sideband, which is the upper side of the signal. So once they had that generated, or once they had that working, now and then there's chaos in the air, because you didn't know if they were lower sideband, upper sideband, plus all these AM stations were out there, and they're like, we can't do this. We're gonna fight. We can't have fights. We got to formulate a gentleman agreement, because we kind of regulate ourselves in all this stuff. We are going to create a gentleman agreement saying this is how we are going to operate going forward, just so everyone is kind of on the same page. So they got together and they decided from 20 in a couple. Let's start with AM. And the AM, you guys can operate in this kind of this frequency range here. You're more likely to find them in whatever this frequency range is on each band. And you guys can operate here. This is kind of like your primary area. But obviously you're not segregated to just that area because it's not FCC regulation. It's not a whatever it is, regulation. It's just a gentleman's agreement. We're generally going to stay in this area. Single sideband single sideband operators kind of have the run of the rest of the area then, and this is kind of based on popularity, things like that at the time. But now you still have chaos because are you upper sideband or are you lower sideband when you're transmitting on these given bands? So eventually, again, someone came in and said, you know what? From the 20 meter band up to 10, 6, etc., we're going to do upper sideband. Just out of best practice, upper sideband from 20 meters on up. And then I guess technically 30 meters, but especially 40 meters down. So 40 meter, 80 meter, 160 meter. There's a couple other, a lot bigger that's not as popular. They are all lower sideband. Now again, there's no law saying that you have to use one or the other, but it is just good practice. And if you want to make contacts with people, you should better be using those two sides. So it's kind of cool to hear how this stuff has been built over the years and understanding some of this history. And there's several YouTube videos on all this stuff, talking about it. Bob Heil loved talking about that type of stuff, and I think that's where I learned half that stuff on Ham Nation way back then. But anyway, I just wanted to share that out with you, that phone is voice, and voice is these different voice modes. That's not touching some of the more digital based stuff like DMR, Fusion, D-Star, that have built on top of the FM signal wave to inject digital into those signals in order to carry data rather than just voice. And so that is just another example. Those are the core ones. There's probably more, but those kind of your basic. As I recall from all the things I've learned, your basics are AM, FM, and then the two sidebands, and everything else operates off of those four modes ultimately. So there's your core knowledge base for that, and 7.3 WX0MK.